Keeping It Do, episode 7. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to this here podcast. If you are new here, however, welcome. Welcome to this podcast. I am your host, David Moito, and if you're listening to this on Anchor.fm, you see, I got it right this time, Anchor.fm/Keeping It Do. Also, guess what? I'm on Jamit. Jamit is a podcast platform for African creators. So I thought that was pretty cool, seeing as how I am indeed an African creator. Why not have this podcast available to the people of the motherland, you know? So you can find me on there as well, Keeping It Do. Jamit.fm/Keeping It Do is where you will find it. And of course, on YouTube. You guys are listening to this on YouTube, who majority of you guys do. I am available. Just type Keeping It Do on YouTube. I am the first thing you will see there. You'll just see a green logo there with Keeping It Do in the middle. That is this podcast channel. Click on it, subscribe, stick around for more podcasts, because that's what we do here. We do this each and every Monday. There's a brand new podcast on there for you guys, for your consumption, for your listening pleasure. So please go ahead and share it with your friends. Have a good time. But a bit of a warning, a bit of an advisory. Today's podcast is a bit of a serious topic, a bit somber, because I lost somebody very, very dear and near to me. A huge integral part of my childhood. His name was James Kagia, but to me I knew him as Guka. He was my grandfather back when I used to live in the US. My whole life in the US. That's a whole nother podcast, or several podcasts, because I have several stories about, basically growing up stateside, growing up in the US, and then eventually moving back here to Kenya when I was pretty old. I was pretty much done, or almost done with high school. I finished high school here, for those of you guys who didn't know. But anyway, that's where my accent comes from. No, I did not spend 2 months there and then all of a sudden got an American accent. No, I don't roll my R's unnecessarily, like halur and all that. No, this is how I speak. I'm not just stereotypical Kenyan who travels to India and comes back with an American accent, or travels to China, comes back with an American accent. I'm not any of those. I genuinely did. My formative years were spent on US soil. But anyway, I lost him, and condolences to his immediate family, blood relation family. He was an exceptional man. He was my grandfather figure while I was in the US, so I have nothing but very, very fond memories of him and the lessons that he imparted on us, and the things he would do with us, like the hide and seek, the tickling. He would chase us around the house, and if he caught you, he would tickle you till you laugh until it hurts. Oh man, it was, and then the singing in front of everybody who was at the gatherings. Usually we would have gatherings of many different families would come, and they would congregate, and he would have us sing a song, or prepare a song to sing, and then he would expect us to sing it. He was a man who loved children. He was just an exceptional person. But I kind of wanted to dedicate this particular podcast to him, because unfortunately the reason as to why he passed on, and he was 90 when he passed on, and that's a full life, by the way. That is a very, very full life. But the reason as to why he passed on was because of COVID-19. Yes, he succumbed to COVID-19 complications. That's what took him from this earth. So I just wanted to basically talk about Corona and taking personal responsibility during this pandemic, and doing what we can to fight it together, you know. He was a doctor. He knew the risks of this disease. He was a retired doctor. He was not treating patients or anything he would during this pandemic, but he still managed to get the disease, which, as I mentioned before, is what eventually took him. COVID-19 is very real, guys, and I hope you are taking it seriously. I hope you are observing the protocols that have been put in place to basically mitigate the spread and the chances of those who would deal with this disease in a very bad way from contracting the disease in the first place. Because the main reason why this disease is so dangerous is because it affects each and every individual differently. Majority of the people who do get the disease usually contract mild to basically asymptomatic symptoms, you know. A lot of people will walk around who are positive, who would test positive, but would not know it because they don't have the symptoms. Their body adapts and they walk around like normal, you know? And to somebody else, the way the body reacts to it, the way their bodies react to it, may be totally different. I mean, you hear of stories of people who had strokes, people who had trouble breathing to the extent that they had to be put on ventilators or on oxygen. You know, it manifests differently in different people. So that's why we need to do our part to make sure that those who are more at risk of contracting very serious complications from the disease don't get to that point. The elderly, those with underlying medical conditions, talking about people with diabetes, cancer, or anything that leaves them immunocompromised already, and then they contract this disease affects them in a greater state. So of course, you know the normal things that have been preached time and time again since the pandemic began all the way back in March about social distancing, wear your masks, practice good hygiene, etc., etc. Please just practice those things, guys. It's not that difficult. Wearing a mask is not a political statement. Wearing a mask is not something that you should be doing just so that you don't get caught by the cops. Granted, it is annoying that the cops, especially in this country, use that as an excuse to exploit Kenyans. Do it for your own personal responsibility, for protecting not only yourself but those around you, because at the end of the day, especially in this country, you may not know if you have the disease, and since testing isn't as widespread as it is in other countries, you won't know your status as well as much as somebody else would in another country, so you have to take extra care. So just follow those particular guidelines, follow those particular steps, and we will get to the end of this disease together, you know, as a world, because the world has joined together to fight it. We're all fighting the same battles. We're all trying to do pretty much the same thing. There are vaccines, plenty of vaccines right now in development, some of them in very, very late stages of production. You have the two American-based developed vaccines in the Pfizer vaccine and the Moderna vaccine, both testing at or coming back with results of 90% effectiveness plus. So one was at 94.5. I think that was the Moderna one, and the Pfizer one eventually in their final results ended up coming back with a 95% chance of not contracting the disease once you did get the vaccine. Problem is, these particular vaccines, in terms of handling them, it's very delicate. Sub-freezing temperatures are required to basically preserve these particular vaccines so that they can be used. So yes, it becomes tricky, especially when it comes to global distribution. But it's a step in the right direction, at least in terms of ending this pandemic and getting back to a place of normalcy. So we are getting to a point where this pandemic will become less and less of a big issue, where we can get back to our normal lives, or as close to normal life as we possibly can get, at least until we're able to nip this thing in the bud and have it to be not as crazy as it is right now. Because listen, the US, which is the hardest hit country in the world when it comes to COVID-19, as of recording this podcast, has more than 14 million different infections. 14 million infections. That is no small number. And we're talking about hundreds of thousands of deaths. As a matter of fact, actually on the day of recording this particular podcast, right? For Kenya, America issued a warning, a travel advisory. They love dishing these things out, man. It's like your free samples. When you go to like an ice cream shop and they give you a free sample, they give these things out like free samples, travel advisories. Anyway, they said that they warned American citizens from traveling to Kenya over high risk of COVID-19 contraction. They basically gave Kenya a level 4 threat in terms of that. And these guys are the ones with close to 14 million infections, right? More than 270,000 deaths. Kenya hasn't even reached 100,000 infections total, and has barely crossed 1,000 deaths. And yet the US is calling us a risk zone, Kenya as a risk zone. But anyway, kudos to them. Instead of dealing with their own pandemic, what they should be doing is they should be advising Americans from traveling so that they don't become the super spreaders of this disease in the first place. Because pretty much almost, you're talking about 14 million people have been infected with this disease, right? And if the US has more than 400 million people, that is such a huge significant of their population that has already contracted the disease. But anyway, that it is what it is, right? And I forgot also Oxford is developing their own vaccine, though there's some wishy-washiness about it. It's called AstraZeneca. There's some reports that it comes back with the 70% working rate. Some tests came back with 90%, up to 90% working rate. So theirs is still, I guess theirs, before they're able to fully use theirs 100%, they still need to answer those unanswered questions about that particular disease, vaccine, whether it is as effective as it can be. But on the same note, the UK is the first Western nation to have given emergency approval for the use of these vaccines. So I guess the world is starting to accept that these vaccines exist, and they're starting to see that these vaccines need to be the first step towards finally nipping this thing in the bud. Actually, by the way, did you guys know that that's what that saying says? It's not nip it in the butt, B-U-T-T. It's nip it in the bud. Because, you nip it in the bud so that it doesn't grow. Like a plant, you nip the bud so that it doesn't grow to be something that's wild. I learned that recently. I always used to say nip it in the butt, but hey, you learn something new every day. But yeah, that's where we're at with this disease, and I just hope that you guys are taking personal responsibility out there. You're taking care of your loved ones. Don't go out if it's not absolutely necessary. Try and stay home as much as possible. If you have the privilege of working from home, please take full advantage of that, and you don't need to go to the offices. Please take full advantage of that, because you're saving lives at the end of the day just by you taking personal responsibility, right? So that's all I wanted to say. Today's podcast episode was pretty short. I didn't want to drag on about this topic of COVID-19 because I'm pretty sure you guys have heard it time and time again. I mean, since March, every headline has included COVID in some shape or form, in some way, shape, or form. So I just wanted to say that because it has hit close to home, at least for me. I knew people who got the disease. There was a point where I actually genuinely thought I had the disease, and now I know somebody who was taken by the disease. So it's real, it's with us. So we need to take personal responsibility, do what we can to mitigate the spread, and we just stick it out until we can get to the end, which we're getting to. I know we can get there, and yeah. Just keep praying, and we'll see the light at the end of the tunnel. And for some people, the light is already visible. Okay? So I want to leave you guys with the ending part of these podcasts called A Little Bit of Introspect, where I read something for you guys, to just ponder on, to think on. And once again, I apologize. We will resume next week to the more upbeat topic and podcast, but I just really wanted to address this today because mentions the reason for reasons mentioned already. Okay, so I want to read you guys this, and it says, it takes years to be comfortable in your own skin, decades, a lifetime, so feel it. Don't be ashamed of yourself, of your body, of your feelings. Be you, and do not give into the anxieties of life. Do not give into your insecurities. You've been through wars, through hell and back to be where you are. So don't let anyone make you feel any less. You know who you are. Guys, it's been a pleasure. Once again, thank you so much for listening to this podcast. Again, stay safe, keep safe. And we'll catch you guys in the next episode. Peace.